Now when a new car is launched, chances are you don't really know what it's like. I mean really like to drive, what it feels like, until you actually get in and drive it. But with the updated facelifted Figo, let's be honest, that isn't the case. We knew what this car would be like almost an entire year ago, and that's because Ford launched the Freestyle. And yes, it was raised a little high off the ground and had some rugged bits on it, but essentially that was the Figo facelift. So now, in 2019, that the Figo facelift is actually here, we know pretty much what to expect from it, right? Or do we? Well, that's why I'm going to drive it today and see if it can surprise and delight. The outside gets the same changes that were applied to the Aspire compact sedan when it got its facelift last year. A new cellular grille, as Ford likes to call it, and new bumpers front and rear. At the front, the fog lamp housings get these L-shaped garnishes, while at the rear, there's a nice contrast section in the bumper. That aside, is pretty much the same as before. Now, if you opt for the mid-range titanium model, these new accents and the grille are finished in chrome. But because this is the top-spec titanium blue version, the accents are gloss black. And so is the roof, and the wing mirrors, and the new 15-inch alloy wheels. Lower models still get 14 inches, sadly. Now this titanium blue with its black accessories and bigger wheels might remind you of the Figo S or Sports Edition, a sporty variant of the old car. The difference is that that car had lower retuned suspension, this one does not. Still, Ford assures us that they have worked on the suspension overall for the facelift, so let's see what the updated Figo drives like. Of course, the one thing that stands out most about this cabin is that new touchscreen, which wasn't on the old Figo. It's a nice 7-inch unit that sits bolt upright and is quite easy to reach. It's also got a very slick and nice looking interface and even comes with inbuilt navigation. What they've left out, however, is Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, and in this day and age, that seems like a glaring omission. As before, the Figo is quite generously equipped. There are, for instance, auto headlamps and wipers, an auto dimming mirror, and on this top spec car, 6 airbags. Apart from all this, it's that wonderful Figo driving experience that we all remember so well. The driving position feels just spot on, the steering wheel feels nice to hold, and these seats even offer a bit of lateral support, which is good. Now this engine makes a healthy 96 horsepower, which is the highest of all the naturally aspirated 1.2-litre petrol engines in this class. And the gearbox is of course the new 5-speed introduced with the Freestyle and then subsequently on the Aspire. And it is a vast improvement from Ford's old 5-speed manual gearbox that you got in the previous Figo. It's not the most rev-happy engine, but you still will enjoy extending it to its red line every once in a while. Okay, there is a bit of a flat zone before 3000 RPM, but once you get past that, it gets a second wind. And when you do extend it, it does make this nice thrummy 3-cylinder noise. Now, unlike the Figo Sports Edition, which you remember was a sporty variant of the pre-facelift car, this one doesn't have lowered suspension. It's still very much tuned with comfort in mind. But Ford engineers also say that inherently it is a sporty setup. So what do we think of that, huh? On a rough road like the one I'm on right now, you feel a little bit of lumpiness at lower speeds, but overall absorption is really good. I'd say the ride isn't quite as good as the Ford Freestyle, but you really couldn't call this bad at all. Now, unfortunately, there aren't too many corners out here on this flowing, sweeping highway here in Jodhpur. But I did drive it up a mountain road yesterday, and I can report that the steering is just that wonderful Ford steering that you love. It's sharp, it's quick, it gives you lots of feedback, and it generally contributes to this being one of the funnest handling cars around. Now sure, the diesel engine is the same as before, but it was always so good that frankly I just had to have another go in it. There's not much for me to tell you that you perhaps don't already know about this engine, but it remains one of the best in this class. It is super tractable low down. For instance, I'm in 4th gear doing less than 60 and doing about 1500 RPM, and I don't feel the need to shift down. And once you put your foot down, it gets into its stride really quickly and just gets a move on. It feels like it's got a lot of grunt, especially in a car so small, and that only adds to the fun driving pleasure of the Figo. The gearbox is essentially the same new 5-speeder as in the petrol car, but of course it has different ratios for the diesel. And it's a vast improvement over the old IB5 gearbox that you used to get in the old Figo. And now a quick reminder of what the Figo is like in the back seat. Not too much has changed in the back seat of the Figo, and that is both a good thing and a bad thing. For instance, you still get pretty decent knee room thanks to this scooped out backrest, but taller passengers will find headroom a little bit tight. You are sat nice and high up, and you get a great view out of these large windows. But there aren't enough storage spaces back here. There are no door pockets at all, and all you get is that one big bottle holder between the front seats. There isn't even a central armrest, but they have listened to customer feedback and provided adjustable rear headrests. Now for the price, at 5.15 to 6.94 lakh rupees for the 1.2 petrol, 5.95 to 7.74 lakh rupees for the diesel, and 8.09 lakh rupees for the 1.5 automatic, it's actually cheaper than the outgoing car, which, given the changes, is mighty impressive. Now, I asked at the start if this Figo facelift could surprise and delight, and while it isn't all that surprising, it certainly is delightful, and that's because the Figo remains one of the best driving cars in its segment. The new petrol engine works really well with this car, as does the new gearbox, and of course the diesel remains one of the best diesels out there in this sort of car. I like that they've also listened to customer feedback and added in things like adjustable rear headrests, but I wish they could have added Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, as that is fast becoming the norm for cars with touchscreens. Still, it remains a very attractively priced hatchback, and for the money, what you get is a little bit more joy for your daily commute.
Now, BMW may have started the craze for luxury SUVs with the X5 decades ago, but here we are today in America with the GLS size X7. It's the first X7. We're in America where it's built to drive it. We're going to drive 700 kilometers today. We're in Tallahassee, Florida. We're going all the way to Baton Rouge in Louisiana. It's going to be an exciting trip. We're going to discover what this new X7 is all about, where it's more luxurious, where it's more spacious, where it's nicer to live in and drive. And there's no better place to do it. Let's see what the car's like. First up, however, let's take a closer look at just what we have here. Now, you may think the X5 is a big SUV, but wait until you come up close and personal with the X7. Now, it's called the X7 and it's a full size bigger than the X5, 1.8 meters tall, it's 5.1 meters long, and this wheelbase is 3.1 meters. But what do I make of that massive BMW kidney grille, the X7's biggest talking point? Is it too big? Sure it is. Does it spoil the look of the car? Well, I sort of thought it did when I saw it in pictures, but today, after seeing it in the flesh, well, I don't really mind it that much anymore. It will stand out though, that's for sure. What will also make this car famous is the cabin, because frankly, no car in this class even comes close. Lined literally from wall to wall in thick, high quality leather with high gloss wood, splashes of chrome, and even crystal or cut glass inserts, it really does feel like BMW has gone the extra mile. So in the interior, in the driver's seat of BMW's X7, immediately what hits you in the face is the sheer quality they've put into this cabin. It's right up there with the 7 Series. The fit, finish, the material quality is just outstanding. There are also some new features here which make it pretty interesting. There's this switch where you can move the second row seats forward or back, and if you need, you can move them in the front. You get massage seats, of course, fantastic shiny wood paneling, this slightly dulled anodyne chrome look. There's individual fan settings for the driver and the passenger. And you get the same seats on the second row. So in the second row, and here too, a lot of comfort. These leather seats are just exceptional, nice and big. There's plenty of space here, and you can adjust them just like you can the front seats on this captain's chair version. Massive door, huge door, so that you can get access to the third row. But what it also gives you is this big window, so a lot of comfort. You're seated at a nice height, you have a nice view out, you can look around. It's a very comfortable place to be, and this soft pillow makes all the difference. The passengers on the second row can even push the third row back for maximum space. And the X7 even scores well for third row seat comfort. Place the X7 low on its air springs for easy entry, and getting into that third row isn't too bad. Now the third row is an extremely important part of this X7. It's a 3-row luxury SUV. So let's see just how comfortable it is for someone as big as me. Now I've folded this seat forward. So here we go, 1, 2, and yeah, you do need to bend. And the seat is a bit low, but comfort levels otherwise are pretty good. Now you have your vent here, which you can control via this blower and temperature control here. The seats are heated, not that we need that today. But the surprising part is a decent amount of headroom, and you're not squatting on the ground. It is pretty nice, the edge point. It isn't too low. You're not seated with your knees too far up, and good levels or decent levels of comfort in the back. And there's even a moonroof to make it feel more airy. What's also unique is that this car gets a 5-zone AC. 2 at the front, 2 on the second row, and 1 here in the third row. You even get your own USB-C socket, so you can charge larger stuff like laptops and cameras. It also has some usable luggage space, even when you're 6 up. Now the good thing on the X7 is that even with all 3 rows up, there's a fair amount of luggage space here. And in case you need to put a lot of luggage in, there's shortcut keys to fold the seats electrically. This one says max space. Let's see. Now the X7, this one we're driving, has 22-inch wheels. Now they don't just look like manhole covers, they actually feel like them, huge. And of course that impacts the ride, so even at a bit of a low speed you get a bit of pitter-patter. There's a bit of movement, and all of this car has air suspension at all 4 corners and adjustable dampers, and it is in comfort. You still do feel a little bit of that road. But when you get to the bigger bumps, it's quite fabulous. It rides over them beautifully. The car is flat. It has a 3.1 meter long wheelbase, and that really gives it a lot of comfort. The length gives it a lot of comfort and stability. What gives the X7 an edge once you step up from low speed is that it uses liquid-filled rubber bushings that help it glide over most bumps. And then there are the active anti-roll bars that all but decouple when the car is being driven in a straight line, making the suspension even more pliant. What adds to comfort levels is that the X7 is isolated from the rest of the world. Now the X7 is what they call a super luxury SUV, and the word luxury means it has to be refined and quiet, and that's exactly what it is. It's a very hushed cabin, very quiet, and what helps is the acoustic glass. You have a windscreen that's acoustically damped. These are double glazed windows all around, and there's a lot of damping inside the chassis, in the shell of the car. So even when you ride over some coarse surfaces like this one, you don't get too much road noise. As we drive further west, the roads get more and more desolate, and I start using more right foot. Now this 40i gets BMW's straight 6, the 3-litre, with 340 horsepower, and when you put your foot down, it winds nicely all the way, almost till around 7,000 RPM. There's a sporty snarl, and it does take off pretty quick. Yes, 340 horsepower isn't all that much when you take the weight of the car into account, But keep your foot flat and the X7 can really sprint. This makes overtaking big 18-wheeler trucks on the single carriageway a breeze. And it feels quick too, even in isolation. 0 to 100 km an hour takes a claimed 6.1 seconds. And while the X7 is both big and heavy, BMW has managed to hide a lot of that bulk. Now it may be bulky and huge, but the X7 also has an active anti-roll bar that keeps it pretty flat. And what also helps is this air suspension, one at each wheel. So as you turn in, you can carry a fair bit of speed. Turn in is neat and tidy, the steering gives you plenty of confidence, and there's so much grip you can carry a lot of speed into corners. Don't expect X3 levels of agility here, however. There clearly is a lot of mass being flung around at the rear, and all that weight does make its presence felt. Expected to hit showrooms somewhere around Diwali, the gargantuan X7 isn't for everyone. But if you're looking for a combination of out-and-out luxury and the ability to seat 6 passengers in comfort, this just could be your best bet yet.
As motorcycle enthusiasts, most of us dream of riding our motorcycles really fast around racetracks while setting blazing lap times. However, in reality, our bikes, no matter how fast they may be, are required to take us to work instead and keep us comfortable in the process. Yamaha thinks this motorcycle, the MT-15, is designed to do exactly that. So let's find out if this bike is just an R15 in skimpy, revealing clothing, or if it is instead an empty promise.
Like the R15, the MT-15 is precise and polished in its mannerisms, but this one wants to flaunt what it's got on city streets. It may not be the most beautiful motorcycle out there, but it sure looks menacing, and the minimalist proportions look just right for the sort of riding experience it promises. On its way to India, it lost its upside-down fork and comprehensive swing arm, something Yamaha India replaced with simpler looking stuff, but there's still an R15 motor in there, and that can't be a bad thing, right?
For sure, those of you a bit bored of what the KTM Dukes look like will really like the slim and stealthy MT-15. But hey, if this is an urban motorcycle, what are we doing here? I mean, this is an old Formula 1 circuit.
Doesn't sound quite right, but a Yamaha, no matter how big or small, is usually a lot of fun, and the MT-15 does sort of stay true to its genes. Thanks to a 138 kg curb weight and an ultra-short wheelbase, the MT-15 feels compact and energetic, and what helps it further is of course the 155cc liquid-cooled SOHC 4-valve motor, which is exactly as powerful and torquey as in the R15 V3, and that means it's quite quick off the line. With Yamaha's variable valve actuation also present, the MT-15 has great low-end performance to offer while still holding a good reserve of tractability towards the top end. Having said that, it's not exactly what you'd call punchy. Yamaha has equipped the MT-15 with a larger rear sprocket than the R15 and altered the final drive ratio as well. But more than those details, what sweetens the deal is how refined and linear it is. Like on the R15, the MT-15 also features a slip and assist clutch, and that translates to a light clutch lever and smooth, mechanically precise gear shifts and the ability to downshift really hard.
Being a naked bike, the MT-15 amplifies the sensation of speed, and the aggressive riding stance makes you feel quite charged up. On city streets, you're not going to make too many friends. But hey, all the nice people are supposed to be riding Hondas, no?
Right. And in the next chapter of How to Lose Friends and Alienate People, we shall discuss the MT-15's biggest strength, the dynamics. Sure, it may not have the all-important upside-down fork, and the swing arm may only be a box section unit, but it still has very good genes, and that perimeter frame has enough merit on its own to make the MT-15 quite a hoot around corners. Apart from the lightweight, the MT-15 also has generously sized MRF zappers at either end, and with that short wheelbase and sharp steering angle, you can have a lot of fun throwing it into corners. Having said that, its cramped riding position does restrict weight shifting to a minimum. While it's just right for a fast ride in the city, to college or to, well, bunking college perhaps, even on long sweeping curves such as the ones you find on a highway, stability is decent. There is, however, one chink in the MT-15's armor.
And that will have to be the braking. The MT-15 does get a disc at either end, and it has good progression as well, but it just doesn't have the kind of bite you'd really like. Thankfully, it won't land you in absolute trouble because there is of course a single channel ABS, but there's no real substitute for very good brakes, is there?
Now, because we're on what is India's finest racetrack, I can't tell what the suspension is like over bad roads. However, from what little I could experience, the MT-15 seems pliant enough and certainly not a backbreaker like the Duke 200. Speaking of comfort, you can make your peace with the compact dimensions, but the pillion seat isn't exactly lavish and may be best left to, well, very close friends.
So the MT-15 is quite enjoyable, but it's not exactly the most practical or the most logical bike out there. And to think you can have more powerful motorcycles like the Apache RTR 204V or the Pulsar NS 200, which are as well equipped if not better for lesser money. Having said that, the MT-15 isn't exactly an empty promise. However, considering it's just this much cheaper than an R15 without offering as much kit, it surely doesn't make a lot of sense. And that, after all that anticipation, is very disappointing.
And now it's time for safety tips with Servo Futura G Plus from Indian Oil.